Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Programming Forecast. So today I will discuss about MVC architecture and separation of concern. So let's not further delay, let's get started. So the first question may be why we are learning MVC before authentication. So let me give you an example. As you can see the code in my screen. So this is basically a code of a controller. Here, whenever the client is sending the registration or hitting the registration API, mainly sending the request to register in our website. So this is a root and this is the HTTP post method and this is the URL or URI. So according to the URI, our code is doing all the work for the registration. So this is basically the code of the controller. The controller is the part of MVC, model, view and controller. So as you can see in this part, here are many work done. A body from the request body is extracted, the information like name, email and password is extracted from request body. Then it is looking for the duplicate email in our database. Then it is hashing the password, and if there is no email exists, then it is creating the user, means it is letting the user register in our web application, and finally after getting the result, it is sending the result to the client. So basically here many works are done in a single method. So many YouTube tutorial will teach you like this. It works fine. There is no problem with the code. It works fine. But imagine after 6 months, your project has login, register, forget password, reset password, email verification, and hundreds of features. So now every route becomes hundreds of lines long. So professional projects actually avoid this, because the problem is, imagine in a restaurant you have one employee and this single employee is doing all the work single-handedly. First it is greeting the customers, then he is taking orders, he is cooking the food, he is washing the dishes. So basically he is doing all of the work by himself. So would that restaurant work efficiently? No, because everyone should have a single responsibility, and software is exactly the same, means single responsibility principle, which is called SRP. So basically one class or one method should have only one responsibility and it should have one reason to change. So the bad practice is doing all the work like validation, hashing password, saving data, emailing the user in a single method. It is the bad practice, and the good practice is keeping different methods or different files for different works. So now we will know what is MVC. What is MVC stands for? So the MVC stands for model, view and controller. So originally it was created for applications with a graphical user interface mainly. Now if I define every layer for you, the model is basically the structure of a data that will be stored in your database, and the view is the HTML code or the UI a client is getting whenever he or she is entering in my website. And finally the controller is the brain of the project. It is controlling everything. That is why it is called controller. It is coordinates the request, and after doing all the work, it is sending the response to the clients. Now in a traditional web application, we use MVC like that. There is a browser, and from browser we are getting the request. I mean, from browser means there is a client over the browser and he is hitting any API. We are getting a request and the request is coming to the controller, and the controller is doing all the work, and after doing all the work, it may need to do any CRUD operation to the database. Now it is going to the model, and the model is doing CRUD operation in the database, and after doing all the work, we are passing the information to the HTML page to view the information, and finally the view is showing in browser. But in our case, we will be using Flutter in our front end, so there will be no browser. So from Flutter app, client is hitting any request and it is going to the controller, again controller doing all the work including the model, and the model is operating CRUD operation in MongoDB. In our case, the database is MongoDB, and you all know that in MongoDB we store data in JSON format. So for us, the view is the JSON format, because in Flutter there is no HTML code. So in Flutter, Flutter always accepts JSON objects as input or as value. So in our case, the view is the JSON object, and finally it is shown to the Flutter web app or Flutter mobile app. Okay, so the next is, now I will share the role of each layer. So in a application, there is different there are different folders, or you can say different layers, like route folders for routing, controller for controlling everything, and we will be introducing service layer and repository layer. Let me show you. Okay, first let me discuss about the root. So what is root? As you can see, there is a picture of a road where there are some directions. So actually root does the same thing. It only directs you according to the request. It accepts the request from the client and it directs you to the specific controller or to the expected controller. Here you can see a code of a root. It is coming from client, request is coming and it is accepting the request. This is a post request, HTTP method post, and this is the URI, and according to the URI and the post method, we can say that the client is trying to register in our website. So basically from this information, the root will suggest the exact controller for us. So here the controller is the register controller. So roots actually direct us to the controller. It don't handle any logic. We won't add any other code in root. We will only suggest the expected or actual the needed controller. Second layer is controller. So as you can see, there are two layers, controller and service. And when first we created our Node app, we have created all the folders. First we have created the controller folder, and we have also created the service and repository folder. So let me explain. So we are dividing the responsibility of controller into different layers. We don't want our controller to be heavily coded. So this is basically a practice of a production ready project, because in classical MVC you only have three layers: model, view and controller. But in a real world project, you will see that controllers responsibilities are divided into 2 or 3 layers. So in our case, we are dividing these responsibilities into service and repository layers. So in controller, whenever a request is coming to the controller from the root, the controller will select the expected service to do the business logic in the service layer, and finally after getting the result, the controller will only send the result to the client. It won't do any kind of work there. Okay, and the business logic or business rule will be lie in service layer. What is the business rule? Business rule is can be hashing a password, or how long your password will be. I mean, a business team decides these rules actually. So these are the business rule. Maybe validation, hashing password, these are called business rules, and these all business related codes will be under our service layer. So controller will suggest us the exact service, and from service layer we will go to the repository layer, and under repository layer there will be every code related to database. Maybe CRUD operation, I mean any operation related to database, can be finding the duplicate emails, creating users, any kind of CRUD operation is happening under repository layers. So we are dividing our work of controller into service and repository layers, so that our controller keeps thin. Now come to the next layer, that is the model layer. So as I said before, model is basically the structure of data that will be stored in our database. If you if you thought this room as a database, and the colored box, these are our schemas, or these are our models, and under this model we will get data of users. Like if I suppose this is our schema of user data. As you can see, there is a schema, and the schema is telling us there will be email and password, these two pieces of information of a user. So under this you will get all the users email and password. So basically this is telling us the structure or architecture, how the architecture will be of our data whenever we are saving it in database. So basically model defines the shape of your data. Okay, now so these are the roles. The next one is, why not let the controller access MongoDB? Okay, fine. So as I said before, we will do all the MongoDB or database related work under repository. We won't do any kind of work under controller, because many beginners do this. If you see the code here, they are finding for an email in database. So this is basically a database operation, and they are doing it under register controller. So now the controller handles the HTTP, handles the request, and it is talking to our database, and basically it is containing the business logics, and it is handling everything. It is operating the CRUD operation, and maybe they can simply added the codes of JWT and codes of hashing passwords. So it becomes responsible for too many things. As I said before, we won't want our controller to be heavy. We will divide all the responsibilities into different layers, because think of suppose one thought that I won't use MongoDB, I will be using another database. So whenever you are putting all the database related work under controller, and whenever you want to change your database, you have to change all the codes of controller. But if you keep a separate layer for the database works, so only by changing that specific layer of the database or repository layer, you can change your database. You don't have to change all the codes throughout your project. So that is why it is very good practice to separate your codes into different layers. So, and also you can use them if you can use them for mobile app, for web app, for multiple purposes. You can use them. Or like if you want to register a user in multiple places of your website, so if you put all the database related registration related database operation in your register controller, then whenever you want to reuse those database operations other place in your project, you can't, because you don't have any you don't have any separate database operation files. You are doing all the database related operations or code operations inside your specific controller, so it declines the reuse of it. And also it is called tight coupling, means database changes force controller to change, as I said before. And also it will be very tough for you to test the code. So the better architecture is layering your projects. So this is simply, in a word, you can say that MVC is a folder structure. How you will structure your project, how you will divide your codes in a project. So this is actually the MVC, and the classic MVC is model view controller. But in real world, we will divide the work of a controller in service and repository layer. So the best practice is, instead of doing all the work in controller, we will separate the work in controller, service, repository, and model. So each layer becomes easier to understand, test, and maintain. Now, why this architecture matters? As I said before, after 6 months of your code, you will be adding advanced features to your project, and it will be getting harder and harder for you to maintain that project, to change that project, to test that project. And with a layered architecture, your routes stay simple, your controllers stays thin, and business logic lives in services, and database code stays in repository. So you can change one layer with minimal impact on the others. Now, the common beginners mistakes are database queries in routes. As I said before, there will be no code under route, only the suggested controller's code will be under route. The route will accept the request and suggest a expected controller. Secondly, hashing password inside controllers. This is a bad practice because hashing password is the business logic and it will be under service layer. Thirdly, sending emails from routes. Again, side effects. Emails are mainly called side effects of a project, and side effects belong to outside routing. And finally, mixing all the codes like validation, logic, and database in one files. We will create separate file or separate methods to doing all that work. So separation of concern keeps code testable and maintainable. So that's all for today. Now in next lesson, we will dive deep into service layer. We will know what business logic really means, why service exists, and we will know service to repository communication, and we will know the dependency flow, and we will learn how to write clean code and test a business logic. So that lesson will be that lesson that many online tutorials actually skip, but it's a key part of how large scale Node.js applications are organized. So okay, thank you everyone. That's all for today. Share this video with your friends and family if they need this, and subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button. Thank you.